This is John Walton, and you're listening to the Power Play Point podcast with the Blue Liner on point and Anna Knox. Here's Wilson, and on the right side, he
Rebound loose, wild scramble in front, score! Ovechkin with a buzzer beater! It'll count!
And a hat trick tonight, number 21,
Hello, welcome everybody, Caps fans out there to this Christmas edition of the Power Play Point podcast. This is the Blue Liner on Point, talking at you live to tape from downtown Glen Burnie, Maryland. And yes, as the late great Tom Petty would say, it is Christmas all over again, even though right now the calendar says December 24th. So that's another week of Caps hockey, another good one that we are have the pleasure of reporting to you once again as Caps fans, and I dare say this team's turning the corner. I don't think they could have timed it a whole lot better. So the Mermaid is still out for at least another week with the upper body injury I mentioned earlier. Looks like she'll be back first of the new year. So this week on with us, he's been on with us before to add his sage and expert commentary from a player's point of view is Mr. Jacob Michael. Jake, how you doing this evening?
Doing very well. Hope everyone else is. Get through the little holiday season here.
Awesome. And remind everybody where you're calling from.
Normally I would be calling from Greenville, North Carolina, but in the spirit of Christmas, I've traveled to be with some family. So I am currently in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Winston-Salem, yeah, good sports town. Winston-Salem State, home of Earl the Pearl Monroe. Remember him fondly. Again, us old timers, you'll get that. If you don't, Google him. Was a great basketball player in his day. Okay, all right. So let's just go ahead and get to it. There were actually 3 games that were on the docket for this past week. And the first one was the first one was kind of a weird schedule. First one was home. The one in the middle was on the road, and then they went back home. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I might be partaking in some unique libations up there. I don't know at the NHL office. Anyway, first game was against Detroit. And this one didn't start out too well. They fell behind 2-0 by the end of the first period, and then it was the Nick Dowd show. He pulled them even. Then they fell behind again. Then Eric Gustafsson continued his scoring ways, got his fourth, tied the game. Then it went to OT, and then Dmitry Orlov, as he's done before, slapped it in the dying seconds and won it for the Caps. 42 shots on goal for the Caps this game. Had they not fallen behind so early, I think they would have wrapped it up in regulation. How did you see it, Jake?
Pretty much the same way. I think there was actually one more goal from each team because I've got 4-3 on that game, not 3-2.
Yeah, no, I skipped over. Nick Dowd tied them up, and then I skipped over Lucas Raymond's goal, so that's how they fell behind again after Dowd tied it up in the before the third. Lucas Raymond put them up again, and then Gustafsson tied it up again. Then they went to OT. Is how it went, and then Orlov got the game winner in the last 22 seconds. So
okay, yeah, I just misheard you then. My apologies, but I certainly do agree with you. I have a 42-19 count on shots. I feel like they were able to control a lot of the pace in that game. And, you're right. It's a little bit more difficult to play from behind where you have kind of a sense of, we got to be a little bit more aggressive. But And I mean, they just look. I thought they looked good. I thought they looked resilient. I didn't think they looked like a team that whenever they go down, I normally feel like, well, it's over now. But I thought they just looked like a well put together team, well disciplined. All the injuries that they've had, they just did what they had to do to grind out a W.
Yeah, that's a good word. Remember that word, resilient, because it's going to come in handy later on this week, especially in our feature game. Yeah, let's go over real quick some of the other stats. 55-3 in the faceoff dot, better than average, and nothing on the power play, but fortunately that wasn't needed. 17 block shots. So they were into it. They were pretty active at both ends of the ice. Good to see. So yeah, just like you said, resilient and stayed in the game, even though the scoreboard didn't look good at times. But yeah, they really stepped up and played a pretty good game. I'm going to let you take over this next one here, the one that was in Ottawa, because I had some family observations. Stuff I had to do with family that I couldn't see the game. So I saw replays, but I don't feel like I can make too much of a judgment. So it's a 3-2 win again in overtime. So I'm assuming you did see the game, and assuming you did, what were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, I caught the second half live. I watched the first half later on recording. Look, pretty much this was a Cam Talbot show. I mean, if he had not, he's the only reason Ottawa gets out of that with a point, because he looked like a Vezina type goaltender that night. He was just making ridiculous saves left and right. I mean, and like consecutively as well. Like, he stole the show. They could have easily, I think, if Cam Talbot would have had an average night, probably put up 6. But it's a trend that, the last time you and I spoke, that they keep following, is that they have to get high on the shot count and start challenging these goalies. Now, I mean, unless you're Jake Ottinger, it seems to work for us.
I'll agree with that. So yeah, second game, back-to-back game with 40+ shots, and I'm fibbing a little bit. I did listen to a good chunk of it, John Walton's call, and from based on his call, it did sound like, just like you said, it was the Cam Talbot show. He was standing on his head, sounded like literally at times, and just kept with his game and kept Ottawa close, even when the Caps pulled ahead, and it looked like the rest of the guys in front of him didn't were ready to call it a holiday already. So the score sheet says Kuznetsov, Milano, and Johansson with the game winner. That's a pleasant surprise. Seeing him get in there. But
that game winner was hustle too.
Yeah, that's really surprised that he got in there the way he did. But I guess we shouldn't really be surprised, because it's not like he hasn't done that kind of thing before. But yeah, it's Ottawa. Talbot carried them, and then just I guess a little bit of puck luck on their side. I don't know. Like I said, I only heard the game. I didn't see it. And Ovechkin apparently got 2 points, 2 assists. So they made him first star of the game. Probably should have been Talbot the way he was playing, but 37 saves. I don't know what he probably couldn't have done much better. Now, the thing, I look at the stats here, the thing I really don't like about this game is the Caps gave up 6 power plays. So lot of bit of undisciplined play for my liking here.
Absolutely. Even though recently, I'll say going back to that 3-2 Seattle loss way back on the first of the month, ever since then they've kind of turned special teams around. But that one, there was not a lot of discipline in that one, especially when the goal that tied was during it was a double minor. So you gave him a 4-minute power play.
Yeah, Yeah, even with a middle of the road team like Ottawa, you don't want to give them that many chances to stay in the game. And yeah, it's that probably was the one thing I really didn't like was that, because
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, the other thing too that I didn't really like watching it was that they did that thing again where the other team will score and then they just kind of it's like they're almost on autopilot while the other team's trying to get that next one. They did that a little bit. Overall, though, 90% of the play that I got to see in person, well, not in person, excuse me, but live, it was controlled by the Caps, really. So I thought overall I would have probably given them an A- on that game.
Yeah, I'm and again I'm going by John Walton's call, but it just seemed like, absent of the power plays, Ottawa had pretty much cashed it in, but the power plays allowed the Senators to stay in the game, and it just, I don't know, it's not becoming of a team that's battling for standings points. And thank goodness they did come away with the win and got the 2 points. And it's one of those games where you have to bank both standings points. But again, I hate to harp on things, but the lack of discipline, that can be a bad habit. I've said it before. You got to stamp out the bad habits in the middle of the regular season when you can, because they'll creep back in the playoffs if you let them. So that was game number 2. So we're going to that gives us that takes us to the last game of the week. That was last night. And unless you were like me and had other obligations at the time, I'm sure if you were a Caps fan, you saw this. This is the one where they came back home, faced Winnipeg again, second time in a week and a half. And we all saw it. And it was the Alex Ovechkin show to start and also to finish. So let's just go ahead and jump into the scoring summary. Ovechkin with his 21st on a snap pass, a beautiful drop from Dylan Strome, who, like we've said so many times, you and I, Jake, he continues to pay dividends on that deal. Beautiful drop pass just along the boards. Ovechkin snaps it home for his 21st. Did you see that? I love the drop pass. I think it's the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to do, and one of the easiest things to screw up. And Strome put it backwards to him, to the captain perfectly.
Yeah, when I was playing, our coach would have benched us if we did drop passes in the high spot. He didn't care, but it's a different style of play today, so it's obviously a more common part of the game. And look, not just the drop pass, but let's talk about the shot. He didn't put that far side; he went back short side on that. Like that's a special shot to do that.
Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the replay from the app. And since it's Christmas time, you'll have to wait. You on the other side of the earbuds, the speakers, what have you. Somebody's been putting gasoline in my gasoline again, my Christmas coffee. All right. Okay, so we're picking up the replay. Okay, so Strome gains the zone, drops it to Ovechkin. Okay, so I saw this. I ran this a couple dozen times, and it looked to me like at first I thought it went over Rittich's glove hand, but I looked a little closer and it actually looked like it went between his pads. If I looked at it right. So I don't know. Now I'm looking at it again. I can't tell for sure, but yeah, I think you're right. It wasn't long side. It definitely wasn't long side. So you're right. Definitely was not on the long side or the open side. It was definitely more the short side. If that's where either is inside of this pad or just under the glove. So looking at it again, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think you're right. It was more short, definitely more short side.
Yeah, well, the purpose of bringing that up is that how difficult it is to make that shot while you're moving and the puck's moving. He settles it down in motion, just puts a snapshot on, and how many times are we going to say it? He scores again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It was just the goal. It was the perfect way to open the game. Of course, brings the house down, and he ties the record. So it's perfect way to start the game. Everybody's in the mood, and you know, I I didn't think I saw some bit of an extra plug for a couple of friends of yours, the Earl brothers. But I saw a couple of, I don't think they did, but I saw a couple of other handicappers mention that they thought maybe because this game was on the tail end of a back-to-back for both teams, that this was going to be a real sloppy game and defense was going to be maybe at a premium, and they had it over 6 goals. I forget what the Earl brothers had it as, but yeah, a lot of other handicappers, like I said, they had this definitely over 6 goals.
Yeah, they probably won if they took the under, because the last time I spoke with Nick, he told me that if they don't have Oshie, you take the under.
Yeah, and that was smart, because that's what it ended up being, only 5 goals for the game, and I don't see how those other handicappers had it, that high, because there's not a whole lot of jump in the legs when you're just coming off a plane. So
yeah, they probably thought Hellebuyck not being in would probably have something to do with that as well.
Yeah, I can see that, but Rittich isn't all that bad, in and of himself. All right. So anyway, getting back to the recap of the game. So that wrapped up the scoring for the first period, I believe. If I can get my app to cooperate again. Okay, yes, it did. So then Sonny Milano gets his 5th. He's another good pickup. Makes it 2-0, 12:46 in the second. This is another goal where he's getting pretty good at those garbage goals, where he'll park himself on one of the sides of the net and wait for somebody to find him. This time it was Connor Sherry, and he knocked it home. 2-0 Washington at 12:46. What do you think of Milano so far?
I love him. I love him as an addition on that team. I've been singing his praises since he got there. I was one of the few people who was wondering why he didn't immediately start playing in Washington rather than going to Hershey. But look, whatever seemed to work is working. He's got 16 points now since he started playing with us.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been largely a role player, and he's still putting up numbers. So I think it's a great addition. And, you kind of want to get younger in the middle of all this too, if you can. So if he's one of those guys that they can get for a good number to be on a decent deal and kind of drop the age of the team a little bit, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up sticking. They might have him. I can't see them giving him more than, say, we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves here, but I can't see them giving him, say, more than a 2 or 3 year contract, but at a middling number. But yeah, if they can land him for something like that, and he doesn't try to highball them too badly, I can definitely see him sticking for that. So I hope that's what ends up happening. So back to the game, and it's on to the third period, and Nick Dowd gets the goal, his 8th from Hathaway and Gustafson, 3-0. Now, it was just before this, about a couple minutes before this, where John Carlson took the slap shot in the side of his head. When I saw the replay, it looked to be right around where the ear meets the jawbone, the top of the jawbone. It looked to be right around there is where he took it. And of course, it definitely the edge of the puck caught him, as everybody saw. It was blood on the ice, and Alan May even said it was dripping all the way to the dressing room. Sorry, not to be too graphic, but people like Christmas colors. There's your red, and if it made you feel ill, there's your green. Anyway, but yeah, not to joke about it too badly. Yeah, that was obviously Carlson didn't return. We hope he's okay. The last word from Coach was that he was taken to the hospital for treatment and observation. But like I said, when I saw it, it hit him right around where the jawbone meets the ear, and so I'm hoping worst case scenario, maybe, just a bad laceration, but it could be as bad as either a busted eardrum or a broken jaw. So if you medicos out there want to speculate and guess, that's probably the bad end of the spectrum. But hopefully he's all right. I've been ragging on him. Of course, he's not exactly my favorite player, but as I've said, he does in his own way make the offense go. So that's going to be very interesting how they handle that. Another member of the D Corps, one who takes all your minutes, missing out of the lineup for Lord knows how long. So.
Yeah, that was actually a really pretty scary hit. I don't know exactly how the helmets they use now are, but I know that when I was still playing, they had like a little plastic piece that would cover the ear, and it was clear, so you couldn't really see it. But if best case scenario, and I know this sounds weird to say that this is the best case scenario, in my opinion, would be that the shot hit that part of the helmet, and that might have broken it, and that was what made the laceration so bad. I'm hoping, like you said, it's nothing more serious than just a really bad cut.
Yeah, hopefully that's all it is. We don't have anything official yet. When we do, we'll certainly post it at the Facebook page and let everybody know, or just just keep up with Nova Caps. They seem to be ahead of the curve as far as stories like that. Dowd scores a few minutes after that, puts them up 3-0. Now, I still didn't think the game was out of reach, though, because I know this Winnipeg team, and they got some guys that can skate and put it in the net. So I wasn't ready to call it a game just yet. I was a little surprised with who responded. So it was Kevin Stenlund, his second of the year. He's a big guy, 6'4". Makes some space for himself and in front of the net, and nice high shot by former Cap Axel Janssen-Fjallby, and Kuhlman got the first rebound. Stenlund parked in front of the net to get the second chance rebound and put it away perfectly. And this is a young guy. I think we're going to hear more from him. 9:59 in the third is when Stenlund got his. Yeah, that's you're a Caps fan. You know that the 2-goal lead is the worst lead for any NHL team, let alone the one that seems to be worst at holding on to it.
Oh my God!
To try and hold on to it with half a period left. So the Caps trying to make their way up the standings. Okay, I knew this probably in for a ride, but I was pleasantly surprised. They kept the Jets at bay, even though they ended up getting 16 shots on goal for the period. But credit to Charlie Lindgren. He had another hell of a game this night. Definitely deserving of that first star of the week that he got last week. So much like Cam Talbot saved Ottawa's bacon, Lindgren really came through for the Caps, especially in the third. Well, the second and third, but definitely the third. What did you see?
Well, just like you said, they had 16 shots in the third, but they only had 26 total for the game. So, I mean, he really got hit that last third period, and what he's done so many times. I've actually been more surprised by him than I have Kemper.
Yeah, I looked at his record, and unfortunately, it's a small sample size, so you couldn't tell. But I knew he would be a pretty good backup in the mold of, going back a ways, Craig Billington. I figured, he'd get his 20 or 30 games, be pretty good, win more than half of them, and serve that purpose. But due to scheduling and injuries and other unforeseen things, he's had to step up. And I think we floated this idea a couple weeks ago, C4 and I, and it may well be time more when they see more of what he's got. I don't think it's we've got all the puzzle pieces to him just yet, but I think if Lindgren continues to play like this, especially down the stretch, and they get closer to capturing a playoff spot, I think it may be prudent for the Caps to make him a 1A versus a number 2.
I agree. I'm
if he
just
can keep
I'm
this
just
up.
kind of wary. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the first thing is if he can keep it up. And my other issue with that, I don't really want to say it's an issue. It's just, I guess, been burned by it recently is the Capitals doing the goalies 1A and 1B experience. We didn't really.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well last year.
And I just don't want it to be a situation where it's everything's the same except the names, because you could really cause some riff if you're doing that, especially with a guy that you've paid to come be a clear starter. I mean, even if he's being outplayed, you got to do something to keep everybody happy. And if he's not getting minutes, that's could cause some issues. But again, if you're trying to put the best product out on the ice and it just happens to be Lindgren right now, then as a coach, you got to go with it. And you give Kemper his chances, and if he's Darcy Kemper still, then yeah, you got a decision to make. But I mean, as of right now, I like where they're at.
Yeah, I think they've actually got two quality goalies in there, and both of them, unlike last year, this is the difference, and this is the point I've been trying to hammer home with the fans out there. You didn't really have now. You could say coaching was a part of it. I'll give you that, and both goalies last year were on a very short leash, but same coin, other side. Neither one of those two made the job theirs for long enough that said, okay, this is my net. I'm not letting go of it. I'm going to run with it. It's my job. It's my net. And, you got two guys. Well, we got the opposite problem now. You got two guys who, when they get the call to start, that's exactly what they do. They take it and they run with it. And I think that your fear that you just described is perfectly founded, because I've seen coaches screw with the heads of their goalies and it go absolutely bad in a lot of different ways. But I think I can see that, well, so far anyway, that there's seems to be an understanding between the two that, it's game by game. Whoever gets the call to start, that's who takes it. And then it's next game, next call. And I think they understand, at least for now, that's how it's going to work. And as long as there's that, I don't think that'll be a problem now. But it can be a problem when, like you said, there's money involved, there's playing time, there's an expectation. And right now, Kemper's the one who's expected to carry the load because he's got the contract. But there's already some out there that are saying, well, maybe let's make Lindgren the number one. Well, not so fast. I don't think it's time for that just yet.
Maybe not just yet, but if he goes, say another 8 to 10 starts consistently like he has been, then I think you actually do have to kind of start looking at that.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if Kemper is giving you 500 money at best, maybe winning barely half the games. Yeah, if he's that bad or worse, maybe, just maybe, you open the door a little bit more for Lindgren, but he's going to have to tank really badly. I just can't see him doing that.
Yeah, I don't either. I've had this discussion with people before. Yeah, and I've had this discussion with people before too. And you don't understand. You can't pay somebody $5 million and then just put them on the bench.
No, you can't. And but at the same time, I also can't. This was floated in one of the other Facebook rooms too. What about trading Kemper to give cap space and calling up one of the younger guys from Hershey? I don't think that's too viable either.
No, it's not.
It's go ahead.
Well, I mean, give me a top competitive team right now where their issue is goaltending. There are none.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say I can't really think of any. Boston's got Swayman who's running away with it. Olmark's not a bad backup up there, so that they're pretty solid in net.
No, I think Olmark actually had Vezina votes.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. So they got a pretty good pair up there. Boston's really
started on New Jersey.
Well, I don't want to talk about them either. But Boston's really the only team I can think of that's really running away with it so far. But no, you can't look at their goaltending pair and say, that's one weakness they've got. No, definitely not.
No, and I'm not certain, but doesn't he have a no trade clause?
Swayman or Olmark?
No, Kemper.
Oh, Kemper. I'm not sure. I'd have to look up cap friendly, but it wouldn't surprise me. And
so you would have to find a fit, or you would have to have an upcoming team that would be willing to pay that much money for a guy who's going to be 36, 37 by the time that deal's up.
Yeah, and locked in. Yeah, exactly. Locked into that contract, and for 5 per. That's just not feasible. I mean, I get the cap concern because in the coming weeks, hopefully, you'll have Wilson coming back, maybe Backstrom, although that seems a ways away. Also, even though he's wearing a non-contact jersey in the practices, but I just don't see how feasible it'll be. So I looked up Kemper's profile on Cap Friendly. His cap hit is actually $5.25 million, and he does have a modified no trade clause.
Yeah, so that would just make
Friendly.
Yeah, so that would just make any potential trade right there even more difficult. If he's got a decent sized list of places he's not willing to go, it's not like you can do much with that. You're locked in with money, and the guy pretty much can control his own destiny. So it's not as easy as just calling up a team and being like, "Hey, I need to do this. Here's Kemper. Give us whatever you're going to give us." It's not that simple. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, no, it's. I think that kind of talk, unfortunately, is not only premature. It's not really productive because I don't think Kemper's really been that bad, and 2, it would be difficult to pull it off. And even if you did pull it off, what are you getting in return besides cap space that is just going to be taken up anyway? So
and if you actually look at his numbers, he's not that far off from what he was behind a terrible team in Arizona. He's still putting up similar numbers.
Yeah. I don't think Kemper's doing that badly. Now he's had a couple of games where he's let in a couple that were, at least that were very, very questionable to be sure, and I get that. And all goalies will have bad games, but I think I would like to think anyway that now that he's had some time to recover from whatever it was that was bothering him, and he's back to being fit again, I think maybe he's put all of that behind him. And that's not to say he'll won't still have a bad game, every once in a while. But to all those who are already thinking, let's trade Kemper now that we got Lindgren, I say, slay what? Yeah, no, not. Yeah, no. All right. So, so we've stalled long enough. Let's get to the good part. So Stenlund makes it 3-1 with half a period left to go. And it was about, I want to say 3.5-4 minutes left where Winnipeg decides to empty their net. And only the Washington Capitals would pull off something that was all at once epic, historic, and hilarious. And if you saw what happened, you know what I mean. And if you didn't, then let me go ahead and describe it for you. So Ovechkin wasn't on the ice when they decided to pull the goalie. So then he takes the ice, and of course the crowd's going nuts, and didn't take him long to get the puck in his own zone. sweeps it towards the net, 100+ feet down the net, and it's sliding, it's heading towards the net, and bang, pops off the left side post. And yeah, you could probably hear the groan all the way out to Cumberland if you were listening to the game, because that was the groan of all groans that when it clanged off the post. And I think everybody figured that was his last best chance of the game, but he got it back not too much later, and he actually gained the zone with Kuznetsov on the wing. Took a look at the net and thought about shooting and didn't shoot, but passed it to Kuznetsov. And what was funny was Kuznetsov threw it right back to Ovechkin, who probably wasn't even ready for it at the time. You could tell because he was actually pinned along the boards by Josh Morrissey at the time. But yeah, Kuznetsov threw it right back to him and manages to fight off Morrissey's check along the boards, turned it, fired it at the open net, doesn't even look, and it goes in. 8:02, he breaks the record, and of course there's Bedlam in Cap 1. And I'm a history guy, and of course everybody knows, and I just love seeing that, and I love the respect from everybody, and especially the Howe family. And I've said everything that I'm going to say about it on the Facebook page, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen, easily. And we're treated to things like this on a nightly basis. I'm just going to say it. We're spoiled as Caps fans to see it, but so be it. It was just so great to see, and I don't know what else to say about it, because there really aren't any words with a generational talent like that.
No, and he's on pace for 50 this year, as of right now, at 37 years old. So I mean, like you said, we've been very spoiled. It has been awesome to watch. For me personally, like I said, being so far away from DC, to have been there in Cap 1 to watch him pass Yager, I just couldn't. Like you said, there's really no words to describe the gratitude when you looked up there and saw Slapshot turn that thing over to 767, and just being in that environment, and then realizing how many times I've seen this guy do this on TV, and then the first time I see him do it in front of me, it just made him the highest scoring European player of all time. So, like you said, we've definitely been blessed and spoiled. The only thing that I would have to say about the record breaker is I don't necessarily like how it happened, because Kuznetsov basically admitted that he tried to force it to Ovi to get that goal instead of taking what was probably the much easier shot. And I've seen some people in comments, and they're right. We shouldn't be trying to force feed him the puck. We need to be winning games and doing that first. And then if he can get the goals, then yeah, that's fine. But when you have a team that's very much still in it and they could come back with an extra attacker out, just go ahead and bury it and get us the guaranteed W. There's over 40 more games. He's going to get it. He is. I just hope moving forward that it doesn't become a thing where guys are trying to force it to him to get his goal count up.
Yeah, and that's been a bone of contention with a lot out there. I'll be honest. I mean, yes, I do see that. I do see it happening. I do say it's a real thing. I don't think it's as big an issue, but I do see it happening. I guess the hope is that it does not become the distraction that it to some that it has been. I don't see it as being as big a problem. I mean, fortunately, it was barely, time dwindling in the game. They were already up by 2, and it was they had the game pretty much won. But if it comes to, well, that's all they're going to do is feed him, then that. And yes, again, I do see that they do that at times, but I just don't think it's the the large distraction that some see it. Now, if it goes towards that way more often than not, then yes, I'll call them on it. I'm not ready to call them on it that much. I think some nights on the power play, yeah, I do see it more often than not. But now that he's past Howe, I think it's going to be a lot less a thing now than it was in, say, the last 5 or 6 games. Now that he's finally passed that milestone, and this next one's going to take some time. It's probably going to take a good 2 or 3 seasons before he gets the 94 goals, the 93 or 94 goals that he's going to need to pass Gretzky. It's going to be hopefully a lot less of a distraction. But yes, I do share that concern. And Jake, you are far from the only one who's expressed that. Well, not only here but elsewhere. And I really hope that does not become their sole offensive strategy. But if they're smart, they won't. But depending upon what their retooling plans are long term, it may or may not be a thing. But that's way down the road, too far down the road to even think about at this point, at least for me.
Right. No, I agree with you.
So, all right. So that was the on ice week that was. So we're going to jump to previews rather of coming attractions. So Christmas and Christmas Eve today are both legal holidays in the Chell. So actually, there are no games scheduled. Okay, so Christmas is actually observed Monday the 26th as well. So there's no game scheduled that day. So it's back on the ice Tuesday the 27th, up to New York and the Madison Square Garden, face the Rangers. That's going to be an interesting game, the first of the year for both of those two. They're kind of neck and neck, and that's going to be I'm going to want to see that, because that I think they're finally going to play. Well, not that Dallas and Toronto weren't high caliber teams, but I think the Rangers match up pretty well with them. So I'm going to want to see how that game plays out. That's going to be a pretty good litmus test, especially if they're looking at not having Carlson. So their next game is. Let's see. So Ottawa again, this time back in Cap 1 on Thursday the 29th, 7 p.m. puck drop. And then they end the year, New Year's Eve, 4 o'clock game against Montreal. And week after that, they don't play again until next year. Ha ha ha. The third, the Tuesday after, 7 o'clock puck drop, hosting Buffalo. Then it's the Blue Jackets up in Columbus on that Thursday, and then Nashville back home. Another road home back-to-back. I don't know what – I would love to know what homemade liquid or unique tobacco the schedule makers are partaking in, but I do not understand the scheduling. I just do not understand the scheduling this year. I really don't. It's gotten ridiculous, and there's talk of Alan May and I think Alan May and Locker discussed this during one of the broadcasts. There's talk of making the season 84 games, and they both said, well, if they're going to do that, then they need to stop with they need to improve the travel, and they need to cut down on these ridiculous back-to-backs. Did you, when you played the game, Jake, did you face anything like that kind of back-to-back games, any horrendous scheduling like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In use, I would have 2 games on Saturdays and 1 on Sunday, and then I'd have 4 practices during the week. It was not fun.
No, I bet.
Well, yeah,
how did you cope with something like that?
I mean, you just had to get your rest when you got it. Don't load your body down with fatty foods. Just try to stay lean. Try and stay as fit and active as you can while you're traveling, just to keep your body loose a little bit. Stretching was really important for me. There's all sorts of little things you can do to try to combat it, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be some sort of exhaustion there.
Yeah, I can't believe they're actually even floating the idea of more games. I think there's plenty of games for the fans to enjoy. I'll say it. This is this really sounds like a cash grab on the owner's part, and it's gonna start to wonder when they're gonna recoup all the losses they're claiming they had because of COVID and all that, and I don't think extending the schedule is the way, and I sure as hell don't think expanding the playoffs is the way. I just don't know, and I really hope they don't force some sort of labor problem again. I don't want to be the one bearing doom and gloom here, but it's ideas like that make me wonder, what do the owners want to do? What do they expect? The businesses everywhere are trying to recover from what happened 2 years ago. They still are, and nobody knows what to do or how to invest their money. Why should hockey be any different? So ideas like that just worry me a lot, and I really just hope that's just some sort of idea in somebody's head that they're just talking about and they're not really serious about, because I, for one, think you're just opening. There have been already a ridiculous amount of injuries this year alone, not just on this team, but others. And I don't really think everybody screams about, well, what's best for the players and player safety and all that. Well, this isn't something that's going to be good for the players. I really don't.
No, I think this is Gary Bettman just giving the Coyotes 2 extra games so they can tally it up at the end of 4 years or whatever it is and be able to afford an arena.
Yeah. I don't think you're far. I actually don't think you're far off there, Jake. That would not be. I would not be surprised if that was something that they cooked up him and Bald Bill Daly. So
he'll do anything except relocate him.
Oh yeah.
But you were saying about the schedule. Something else I noticed when I was looking at it, and I'm going to go a little bit further than you did. You went down to the 6th with the Predators. So between December 27th with the Rangers all the way to January 19th with the Coyotes, the Rangers are the only team that Washington plays in that stretch that is higher than them in the points race right now. You mentioned Ottawa, Montreal, Buffalo, and then the Columbus, Nashville back-to-back. After that, they've got their next 3 games is one in D.C. against the Jackets again, and then they've got a home-and-home with the Flyers. And then they're at Long Island with the Islanders, and then Minnesota is, I think, it's the 8th seed in the West right now. And then they'll actually visit Arizona. So in that span, if they're getting guys back and they're already on a roll, if they come back, they could probably win 10 of their next 12, I would think, just looking at it. But the other thing also, like we were just talking about the ridiculous back-to-backs that they have. That game against the Islanders I was mentioning is on January 16th in Long Island, and our game against the Minnesota Wild is the very next day on the 17th in D.C. So they've got 2 home road back-and-backs in less than 2 weeks.
I've already said what I said about the scheduling, and that's just another example of it. And I don't get why they have to put up with something like that, and other teams get away with a whole month of not even having a back-to-back, let alone something crazy like a road home or a home road back-to-back. I don't know. I don't know that if they want to play, they want the players to play 84 games or more, then they got to cut that crap out. They really do.
Yeah, because I'm looking at it right now, and they're going to have 1, 2, 3. They've got to do that 4 more times before the year's over. Do a back-to-back home or road.
Terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah. With the first one they've got after the Islanders Wild I just mentioned is actually coming back from the All-Star break. They'll open up in Boston on February 11th. And then they'll be playing the Sharks in D.C. on the 12th. Then where was the other? The Rangers and Sabres at Madison Square on February 25th. Or no, excuse me, at D.C. on February 25th. In Buffalo the 26th. And then the last one, I believe, is right towards the end of the season. Yeah, so 2 of their last 3 games are going to be road home back-to-back. They'll be in D.C. for the Islanders, and then the next day fly to Boston for the Bruins. And that'll be the last one that they have to do. So, yeah, I think because they've already had like 3 of these so far, I think. So to have to do that for basically 10% of your games in a season, you know, we said it the last time we talked, shame on people who gave up. I mean, but they've had injuries, the schedule against them, and they're in a playoff spot during Christmas break.
Yeah, no, they've got the last playoff spot, and just like you said, they're not playing a whole lot of strong teams going on the next 2-3 weeks. So this is a great opportunity to start banking some points, and maybe solidify your position, maybe even climb out of the wild card spaces into one of the top 3 slots. Because if you know the Caps, you know that come the All-Star break, they're gonna when after that hits, they're going to start, falling back into bad habits again and start whatever it is that makes them play so badly in mid-February and beyond. So that is a great time to start really banking some points, climbing the ladder, and maybe putting some distance behind teams like the Rangers and the Islanders and catching up to all the division leaders, because if they don't now, then they're going to run out of time, because the schedule only gets a lot tougher towards the end, and especially in mid-January to the All-Star break and beyond. There's some really tough. There's a West Coast swing that they have coming up. That actually that's not going to be too bad, because Anaheim and San Jose aren't all that great this year, but the West Coast road trips usually do a number on them. So I would hope by then they solidify themselves. But these next 2-3 weeks, they've got some games where if they don't get, I would say, 80% of the points, then might be a little bit time to worry. I think they can, but as long as they don't play down to their opposition, which they're prone to do.
You're right.
So,
well, the other thing too that's kind of working out in their favor is New Jersey's kind of finding their ground again. They had that hot streak. I think it was 13, 14 straight games they won.
Mm-hmm. And they just came off of a 6-game slide. They just won one after losing 6 in a row. So and they're, like you said, they're coming back down to earth.
And it's crazy to say this, but before that first little win streak we put together before the Dallas game, that was the first time we had won more than 3 games in a row. And New Jersey, a team that had won 14 games in a row, look at the points. We're only 6 points behind them.
Mm-hmm.
That's only 3 games. So, that's why everyone needs to remain calm. We ain't even turned the calendar yet, and people was talking about throw in the season. No, don't throw in the season. I mean, I get it. It's a loaded draft class coming up. You want a good pick. Cool. I'd rather not miss the playoffs.
Yeah, when you got a team that's good enough to at least make the playoffs, why toss it in? You're right. I never understood that, and that's why I spent the last look. You don't like you who didn't believe in this team and thought, okay, we'll tank it and go for the high draft pick. I'm sorry, but shame on you. This team is still good enough, has proved it's good enough to at least make the playoffs. As we all said this a number of times, you make the playoffs, and that's all you can do. Now, what they can do in the playoffs, that's going to be a whole other bucket of chicken to deal with. But at least
have cap space to deal with.
Yeah, we're right, and at least get there, and maybe you'll get all your guys back, and they'll be fresher, and see what happens. Look, there's a reason that the whole thing with, well, Mr. Leonsis, please do what you can to make this team at least be competitive, before I retire. He has a right. He had a right to ask that. And if you're not understanding what I'm talking about, it came out last week or the week before that Ovechkin kind of, threw the sauce at management and ownership. Said, look, I'll sign, but do what you can to keep the team competitive. I don't want to spend my last few years, tanking for draft picks. And that's why you're seeing this team do what it can. That's why Dylan Strome got signed. That's why they plucked Sonny Milano out of nowhere, literally. So
I can't believe he made it to us.
Well, I mean, Anaheim passed on him, and they've been making a whole lot of bad decisions for at least 4 years now. That's why they're where they are. I think he had a PTO with Edmonton. I don't know why they passed on him. And he started out as a first-round draft pick of the Blue Jackets. And
yep.
They've had more fire sales than two neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So we're like I said last week. Their loss, our gain. We're the recipient of their bad decision. So I really hope what they decide to do is sign him to a fair deal, and he'll want to stick for at least the next couple 3 years. So
that would be ideal.
That would be ideal. I think he and Strome, they can make them, if they play their cards right. Strome and Kuznetsov can be the nucleus of the forward core. The only trick is going to be making the defense younger. But
which they can do that this offseason.
They can. Well, they're not going to have a choice.
Yeah.
Because Carlson's the only one under contract after this year. So that's going to be another hand to be dealt with. Going to be very interesting. So you armchair GMs, you're going to want to have your say come probably April or May of next year, because that's going to be a pretty hot topic around here. So all right, well that's the week that was on the ice, and the near future for the Caps. Future's looking pretty bright as long as they keep their mentality next man up. I know it looks bad on the injury front, but come the next few weeks, they are going to get some guys back, and I think some holes will be filled. I'm probably going to throw out another tangent here, but I think I didn't see it until this past game, to be honest, what this guy was contributing. But I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm starting to turn the corner on Nicholas Aube-Kubel.
Yeah, I just wish he was a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah, I did not see the reason, because he had been the Caps are his fourth team in 2 years, and there's a reason for that. And look, one of them happened to be the Stanley Cup champions, but there's a reason you bounce around, you don't stick if you're not worthy of that. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out why they went after this guy. Now I see it, because I guess the phrase I can throw out there to simplify all of this is potentially, maybe a little bit, Tom Wilson light. He's got the right amount of physicality, and he can contribute, albeit in a smaller sense. And when I say smaller sense, I mean don't play him beyond the bottom six ever. But in a smaller sense to your offense, because he's actually managed to score points in 4 out of the last 5 games. So and like Jake said, as long as he can stay disciplined and not take bad penalties, then he's a solid addition. Alan May was raving about him. I didn't know why. I finally saw it. Finally got around to seeing it this past game against Winnipeg, because his play was a lot of the reason Winnipeg didn't get, even though they got all those shots in the last period, that not a whole lot of them were really, really threatening. He was a reason, not the reason, but a reason for that. So, but
he
as
was
long as
also
go ahead.
he was also a big reason that Ottawa got a push in momentum in that game with his high stick in the neutral zone. It didn't even look like he was trying to lift the stick. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was just speed, the pace of the game, if he just threw his stick up somewhere he didn't mean to. But little things like that. When you're already somewhat kind of losing the momentum, you can't just take penalties like that. Especially, I think his was the 5th penalty of the game. It might have been the 6th, but when you've already been penalized that many times in the game, you just got to be careful. You can't keep giving up chances, especially in a tie game.
No, absolutely, and therein lies the flip side to that. It's you got to take the good with the bad, as they say, and he's shown a lot of good, thank goodness, but like you said, the bad penalties can be a detriment, and it's not something that you want to see from a guy like that. And I kept thinking to myself, why not put a Joe Snively in there? Now I see it. Joe Snively, for all his greatness, isn't quite as physical. So I get it. If he can give you some upside and give you some of that physical play you've been missing, yeah, I get it. But like you said, Jake, as long as he stays a little bit more disciplined than he has been, yeah, that's definitely what you want to see. All right. Well, so that's the on ice and off ice action. So this being Christmas, wanted to give an early Christmas present out there. Actually want to make this something of a regular thing starting now with our podcast, and that's giving a shout to a local business. So Mrs. Blue Liner and I had the pleasure of trotting out to a local farmers market in Crofton. And they got one of the best farmers markets I've ever been to be honest. And came across a company called Hansel Hill Farm and Orchard. They have all kinds of delicacies you can imagine. Honey in jars, homemade honey. We settled for a ground home version of a black garlic, which if you're into cooking like my missus is, and a lot of my friends are, this stuff is absolutely to die for. They make all kinds of great goods. You definitely want to check them out. So that's Hansel Hill Farm. I will be posting their online information in the show notes of this podcast. And they didn't ask, and I didn't tell them, but I wanted to start with these guys because they gave us an absolutely great deal on the black garlic, and they had, like I said, all kinds of great treats that you can imagine in that they were selling. So definitely check them out. Again, that's Hansel Hill Farm and Orchard. And they're in Crofton and Millersville. That's Anne Arundel County. It's in Central Maryland. You're in the area, and you have a chance to check them out. First of our shouts to local businesses in the DMV and beyond. And if you're not in the DMV, as is Jake, and you got someplace you want to plug, do please give us let us know, and we'll certainly check them out and give them their 1 or 2 minutes of glory on our show. So we'll keep you all in mind as well. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here for the next to last episode of 2022. Think we pretty much covered what you can expect as a Caps fan for the next couple of weeks. Jake, thanks once again for coming on. And with the injuries, I really think I think your timing's pretty good here. I think the fans really need to know what it's like for a player when you have the threat of injury looking at you in the face, and you see a lot of your mates and they're talking about stuff like increasing the schedule and what it is you got to deal with. I haven't played the game myself, so I can't. Unfortunately, that's not really something I can relate. So it's great having a guy like you on that can relate something like that to our listeners, because it's it looks like a game on the ice, but you really have to dedicate yourself, dedicate your body to be worthy enough to get out there and perform.
Yeah, and people don't understand, man. Each shift takes a little bit out of you, a little bit more every shift. And, like you were mentioning, when you have to do these back-to-backs and you have to travel all the time, it really does. You get jet lag. I mean, you get used to not being in one spot, maybe not being around your loved ones all the time, so it takes an emotional toll too. So, I mean, these players go through a lot. That's why it's good to get these little breaks in somewhere throughout the season, and just hoping we can come out of this break the same way we're going into it.
Yeah, sure do. Definitely. And okay, so before we go off the air real quick, go ahead and let the listeners know where they can find you, Jake, and your new podcast, the Sudden Death Sports Podcast.
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook at Sudden Death Sports, YouTube under the same name. Still working on an IG page and other socials. So those should be up after the new year. It's just been a little bit difficult to consult with Nick when we're in two different parts of the country to get stuff out. So once everyone gets back from the holidays and we kind of get settled back in, we're going to be coming at it a little bit harder and getting things out there for everybody. So if you guys want to tune in and check us out, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Yep, and that's starring this gentleman, Jacob Michael, along with Nick Earl of the Earl Sports Bets Group. And once again, that's the Sudden Death Sports Podcast that you can find on those channels that Jake just described, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube especially, and more. We'll be posting those links as well in the show notes once we have this episode up and running. So thank you again, sir, for joining us once again, lending your observations and expertise from the player side. And yeah, like Jake said, hopefully they can stay on this winning trend and climb the ladder and get some more points here, and hopefully nothing but good, at least, coming up here in the next few seasons. So with that, the next to last episode for 2022 is done. Merry Christmas, happy holidays out there for you listening, be you in the state of Maryland, Commonwealth of Virginia, and of course the District of Columbia and beyond in North America and across the pond, wherever. God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in, and stay with us. So this is the Blue Liner on Point signing off and reminding you, well, if you ever wondered, because Santa Claus has a busy night, obviously. You ever wondered, when he travels in his sleigh, what he pays for parking? Well, it's nothing at all. You know why? Because it's on the house. Hallelujah, and let's go Caps.
Let's go Caps.
This has been another episode of the Power Play Point Podcast. All episodes are available from Apple Podcast, the Podbean app, blueliner77.podbean.com, and now available from Stitcher. Music by Joe McAllister, voiceover by Jeffrey Conkle.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Power Play Point Podcast. Thanks for listening.